Good afternoon, members, colleagues. Mr. Kutsia, can you please give me an indication if ICT is ready for us to proceed?
Chairperson, that's correct. We may proceed. They have started the streaming on YouTube.
All right, thank you very much. Good afternoon, members, colleagues. It has just gone 2 o'clock. I see the hand of Mr. Hassan. All right, that hand dropped. Good afternoon, good afternoon, members. Good afternoon, colleagues. It's just gone 2 o'clock. Just for the record, my name is David Mitchell, the chairperson of the standing committee. Members, I'm going to give you an opportunity to introduce yourselves for the record before we move to apologies.
Afternoon, Chairperson, and to the rest of the members. I'm Lulama Mvimbi. Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Chairperson. My name is Enriquez van der Westhuizen, and I'm a member of the Standing Committee on Transport and Public Works.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Chairperson, and good afternoon, everyone in the meeting. My name is Matrodi Maseko, and I'm alternate in the standing committee, standing for Derek America, who sent this apology, Chair.
Thank you very much. We have noted the apology of Honorable America. Are there any other members?
Good afternoon, Honorable Chair. My name is Naomi Nkondlo. I'm an alternate member of this Standing Committee of Transport and Public Works.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Thank you very much, members. Are there any other members that would like to introduce themselves for the record? If not, members, I'm going to ask with your indulgence, if it's in order if I switch off my camera, because the streaming I don't want to be kicked out for connectivity reasons. Are there any objection to me switching off my camera?
No, sir.
Agreed.
All right, thank you very much, members. Members, as per the agenda for today, we will be briefed by the department on the recent developments to improve commuter safety and the partnerships between the Golden Arrow, the provincial government and the City of Cape Town to ensure the stability and safety of the bus service, highlighting the role, functions, responsibility and challenges of the various role players in this partnership. Members, I'm not going to go through the rules of engagement, and I think we've all been through this meeting procedure on numerous occasions. But what I am going to ask is if you want to let me to a point of order for any ICT related assistance, that you please use the hand raise function or alternatively alert me through the procedural officer. Can I please ask that the ICT now mutes all participants and only provide the opportunity when a member then contributes to the meeting? I want to alert all participants on this meeting that you will only be allowed to make an input or submission once I've recognized you from the chair. With that being said, members, I'm also going to allow the various stakeholders and the departmental staff to introduce themselves before I hand over to the acting minister, Minister Simmers, and the HOD for some opening remarks. So, Minister, over to you for introduction, and then also to the department before moving on to the City of Cape Town, and then to the Golden Arrow bus services.
Good afternoon, Honourable Chairperson, members of the Standing Committee on Transport and Public Works. Once again, thank you for this opportunity for the department to come and account, but also to answer some of your pertinent questions to a matter I believe that is quite crucial in time which we are going to discuss now. Thank you very much. I'll hand over to the HOD.
Thank you, Minister. HOD, over to you.
Good afternoon, Honourable Chairperson and members of the Transport and Public Works Standing Committee. Jackie Gooch, Head of Department of Transport and Public Works. I have with me in the meeting today 2 of the DTPW team members who've been working on responding to this particular matter in collaboration with our City of Cape Town colleagues, as well as with our colleagues from Golden Arrow Bus Services. And if I may, Chair, through you, just to introduce Mr. Ricardo Collins, as well as Mr. Faisal Williams, who will take us through the presentation from Transport and Public Works. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, HOD. I'm now going to move on to the City of Cape Town. I see Alderman Smith has joined us from the City of Cape Town, as well as Councillor Lyle Koch as the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee in the City of Cape Town. So Alderman Smith, I'm going to allow yourself to introduce you for the record, and then also just to give us an indication who has joined you from the City of Cape Town.
Chairperson, thank you very much. You've already referenced Councillor Lyle Koch, who introduced himself by video. Then also Deputy Chief Sean Smith from Law Enforcement is present. Neil Arendse, the Transport Enforcement Coordinator from the Transport Department in the city, as well as Neil Slingers. And Caroline Knott, I suspect, is on the meeting as well, representing the Mayor's office.
Thank you, Alderman Smith. I'm now moving on to the Golden Arrow Bus Service, just for introductions.
Good afternoon, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Good afternoon, Chair. Thank you very much. Myself, Francois Meyer, is attending the meeting, as well as our General Manager, Mr. Derek Meyer. Thank you.
All right, with all the introductions out of the way, is there anyone that we have missed? Right, if not, Minister, I don't know if you want to make any additional opening remarks, or if you are comfortable that we go straight into the presentation. Members, just for your information, I'm going to deal with the meeting today. So I'm going to allow the department to do a presentation, and then we'll move over to the City of Cape Town if they have a presentation or additions that they would like to make, and then I will provide Golden Arrow Bus Service to make their contribution or input to the meeting, and then I'll deal with all questions at the end. So please jot down your questions, and then we'll deal with it after all presentations have been made. Minister.
Thank you very much, Chair. Once again, thank you for the opportunity. And I'll be very, very brief, Chairperson, before I hand over to my HOD and the team to do the presentation. But I do believe if the members are going to focus on our presentation, they will see, and we will take them through our thought process of how we came to the solution to deal with the PDIA, and also we will focus on 5 specific key areas which the members will pick up in our presentation as well. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Minister. HOD, any opening remarks from your side, or do you want us to go straight into the presentation?
Perhaps, thank you, Chair, through you. While I make 1 or 2 opening remarks, I'll ask Mr. Faisal Williams to be able to get the presentation ready on screen, if you don't mind, because he will take us through the presentation. But just to indicate that certainly the department appreciates the opportunity following on from the previous committee meeting, where there was interaction with the role players, our department, Golden Arrow, and the City of Cape Town. And this is something that we will share and indicate how integrated or I suppose interrelated potential solutions are and responses have to be to the problems that are identified. And I do trust that the team will be able to give you a sense that we take this particular matter with Golden Arrow and the safety of commuters incredibly seriously. And certainly you will be able to get a sense of the work that has commenced in response thereto. Thank you, Chair. Over to you, Faisal.
Thank you, HOD, and we'll move over to the presentation.
Thank you. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
All right, good. Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members, and to everyone present in the meeting this afternoon. So, as the introductions I've stated, we are to give you some feedback from the bus community safety work group this afternoon. So this afternoon we're going to take you through the journey that we've been on thus far. I will very quickly go over the PDIA methodology, but really in itself the presentation is sort of structured in a way that will take you through the process that we followed in detail. So a key part of the process is making sure that we really unpack the problem in great detail, and that will be covered then in defining the problem area of this presentation as well as the problem analysis. We'll then take you through the thinking on designing the solution and our strategic thinking around sort of packaging solutions for this. And then we'll go into the project list and the next steps we'll follow through this process. So the PDIA, for short, and the longer word is the problem-driven iterative adaptation methodology. So it's a method of public sector reform and was piloted by the Western Cape government in 2019, 2020. The process focuses on a structured, fast-paced collaboration between the different spheres of government and focusing on complex transversal problems. So this team, which we called the commuter team, was specifically tasked to look at the current problems we are facing today, and that is the spate of attacks on buses and on our public transport. The team comprises of myself and Ricardo Collins from the department, and then as well as Neil Arendse and Vuiswa Kraber from the city of Cape Town. The problem itself needs no introduction at all. I think that's the reason why we're here this afternoon. A quick scan on the internet will give you enough archive material to describe what the commuters have been facing on a daily basis. So part of the whole PDIA process, we kind of start off by defining the problem in a lot of detail and defining that problem. We've resolved that. We've resolved the problem statement to then be as that the commuter bus operations and their passengers are unsafe as they have been subjected to increased attacks over the last few years. That's what we're sort of focusing on now. So these attacks include mainly robberies, but then we also know that our buses bear the brunt of service delivery protests as well. We know that the GABS fleet is the primary target for these attacks, but My City and Tyler Ride have been attacked as well, and these services are equally vulnerable. So we really are looking at land transport in totality and the bus services across the province. But for now, the priority area really is the GABS fleet. In 2020, we've had 224 robberies and 102 million rand damage in last year, or this year rather, up until the end of April. We've already had 93 armed robberies, averaging five per week. We've just spoken this morning, I've spoken to the team this morning about this, and we're sort of grateful that we haven't had any incidents for May thus far. And even the mere fact that we haven't had any incidents for May is something that we need to understand a bit better. April was a particularly bad month with around 25 incidents on the record. So if you've ever thought for a split second that, you know, is this a problem that's really worthy of unpacking? The answer is a resounding yes. The impact of this problem is truly cross-cutting, you know, from the mental torture of having a firearm pointed at you and relieved of your possessions to the physical harm of them actually being shot or stabbed, which has been the case. The loss of property, damage to reputation, and the fact that these crimes are targeted on a captured audience and are basically targeted at the poorest of our communities is a reason enough that this is it confirms that this is a priority problem. The MO of the perpetrators is quite clearly defined. The GABS service is currently the main target. perpetrators are firearms and knives, and they're operating groups of up to 7 at a time. So real cowardly acts, if I could call it that. The perpetrators primarily use 2 strategies. They either board the bus as a passenger and then wait for the opportune time to strike. So some cases they'll board a bus in, for example, in Muizenberg, and then they'll only strike once the bus hits sort of the township areas. That's the first thing they do. So they disguise themselves as well. They act as passengers till they decide now's the right time to strike, or they clearly indicate the intent from the outset by gun pointing the driver and forcing him to stop the bus and open the doors, and then thereby robbing the bus. They target specifically the cash the driver holds from the fares collected, but then also they target the passenger belongings. You can imagine a full bus in peak hour. Everybody's got mobile phones, so that is quite a popular target as well. And they always alight the bus at a point where they can readily escape, or where they know they won't be followed very easily. So the incidents are recurring, and this definitely indicates that this is a real chronic problem that we have now at the moment. So we are essentially dealing with crime on linear public transport systems. So it can also be called like a moving sort of crime, which means that where the perpetrator starts committing the crime and where he gets off could be in 2 different sort of wards, you could call it that. So using Government Becky as a corridor, as an example, this is by far the worst performing corridor over the past 3 years. So from 2018 up until last year, it's been the sort of top performing corridors for incidents. So we know where these incidents are happening, and the incidents are definitely corridor specific. We can also answer the when question. So, apologies for the inconsistencies in the graph types here. But what these graphs are essentially saying is that the criminals are most active in the time period between 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock in the evening. So this is essentially the afternoon peak period, and when people are going back to work after a hard day's work. So the afternoon peak period. So we know sort of it's corridors so to focus, and we know the time periods that these attacks do happen. Unfortunately, these attacks would equally happen at any day of the week. So Monday to Sunday, normally the weekdays are more popular, with the weekends having less people on the buses, but any day Monday to Friday is an open target basically. So after determining the problem statement, we followed a common problem analysis procedure to really get into the various potential causes for the problem. This step, specifically as part of the PDIA process, is called deconstructing the problem. So we took the problem statement and interrogated under the broad headings of legal policy, regulatory and risk, institutional and coordination, funding, spatial and sector bound, enforcement systems, public transport, technology, communications, and then socio-economic areas. This is really just getting to grips with the problem itself. This is when you start learning just how complex and transversal this problem actually is. And what this process does, it leads to a thorough and a more accurate understanding of the problem in all its facets. We always sometimes think we know all the answers, and sometimes this process is helpful to not only confirm and verify your existing assumptions, but and going to those tasks that we know and use, that we know sort of the type of jumping to solution sort of thing, but it's also to learn new points of view. So different points of view and the perspective of others is vital, and it's vital to this process as well. So we've consulted extensively. When you speak to bus drivers and they tell you that the roads are bad in some of the corridors and the buses find it difficult to navigate through them, and criminals use these opportunities then attack the buses, you actually need to go and verify this information for yourself. So the information that you get from those internal to the context and not from outsiders is invaluable to the process. So we've consulted within our department, within the City of Cape Town, but then specifically we've also spoken to cluster commanders and SAPs, and we've spoken to the GABs management, the area managers, as well as doing a focus interview with a number of the drivers that have been the victims of these attacks. So now we have a pretty good understanding of the problem. And you sort of ask the question, where do we begin to solve this now? So, what do we do, and how do we address as many of the causal strands that we've discovered? But then also, what is practical and what is within our mandate, and how can we ensure rapid implementation? There is an agreement. I think we can all agree that the transport system is almost symbiotic with its environment, and it affects its environment, and its environment affects it as a public transport system. But then also it's such a complex problem that there is no silver bullet that's going to kind of make everything go away. What it's going to take is a concerted, coordinated effort and a basket of solutions and looking towards a more of a systems approach. So we really tackle this problem from a number of angles. So typically in any crime fighting textbook, you would want to tick as many of these boxes as you possibly can. I'm not going to go through all of them. Essentially, we sort of refine this further as a group, and we're using just three sort of broad categories. The first is reducing the desirability of the target, making it harder to commit the crime in the first place, reducing the opportunities for attacks. Currently, buses are seen as soft targets, and this needs to change. The second one is increasing the likelihood of being caught. So if you choose to rob the bus, irrespective of everything else, then you need to have that fear in you that you will get caught. At the moment, that fear is lacking, and these attacks are quite brazen sometimes. So these perpetrators need to know that they'll be caught and that they'll be punished eventually. The third one is community ownership, and one of the biggest deterrents to crime is actually the fact that you'll get caught and punished, but also the social embarrassment. So we need to improve the apprehension and conviction rate, but really what we want to do is change the hearts and minds of our people and of our passengers and of our communities. It's difficult to install pride in something when there's sort of chaos all around you, and this is where the environment plays such an important role. And it's arguably one of the more difficult problems to solve, but it's something which we are considering. But more about that later. So if you rewind a few years, and we will be talking about these sort of attacks and robberies on the rail network, and not on buses, with a greatly reduced numbers currently being transported by the trains. With some sections of the line still out of operation on the central line, crime has now displaced to other modes, and this is what we are experiencing now. So this is a phenomena that we sort of need to understand in a lot of detail. So if any measures introduced are successful, we need to be agile, and we need to be able to react quickly before it causes an issue somewhere else, so like the crime moving to another corridor, for example. And becoming a problem there where there's less focus, or the problem moving to my city. So that is something which we have to keep an eye on. And the second thing is, what we are doing is I just want to mention that it's not a study in criminology. Yeah, we're not looking into the root causes of crimes and the social root causes. Our problem solving exercise points ultimately to root causes which are all too familiar with, like unemployment, poverty, substance abuse, gang activity, and even school attendance. So we won't be with what we're proposing to do. We won't pretend to be tackling all of these social ills. But it must be said that we will be going around in circles if these challenges aren't addressed in a meaningful manner. So it's the difficult questions that are really the root causes. What we're trying to do is really provide a crime fighting response to the problem. So considering all these factors that we've kind of just mentioned to you now, we've identified 5 entry points into the projects, which we're calling now, we've identified five entry points, which are now calling projects. So the projects are mostly either joint operations by the main stakeholders, being the department, the City of Cape Town and GABS, or they are independently led by some of the stakeholders. The projects are in some cases very well defined, and in others we're still working out what we can practically achieve. So the whole idea of the PDIA process is that we don't wait until we have the perfect solution, but we go out there and we start making incremental changes and making these small improvements and getting these small wins that we can that helps us achieve our objective. So the goal is to now also align all the projects so that we can extract the maximum impact. We sometimes a lot guilty of working in our silos. So it's a key part of this the process is that collaborative effort and making sure that everybody sort of works together to achieve a common goal. I have to add as well that this project list isn't necessarily final or conclusive. This is only us identifying the immediate entry points, thinking of our mandate, thinking of what is quick to implement, thinking of and starting to really chip away and hopefully making some good progress. Okay, so the first project is a public transport enforcement unit. The whole idea is it's a sort of tried and tested model we've used to great success on the rail network with the rail enforcement unit when we were having these sort of problems on the rail. And it's the main aim is to reduce opportunities for crime by increasing visibility and being able to improve on our response times in the event of an incident. The project will be jointly funded by GABS, the city and the department, and we are currently following the sort of administrative processes to get this project started. The unit, if it does happen and does take off, the unit will eventually be sort of operated and managed by the City of Cape Town. And it's something which we are now working at behind the scenes to get off the ground. And one of the biggest challenges, I suppose, for a project of this nature, and something that we've learned on the REU, is that you do need a multi-year sustained approach in order to see a lasting impact with these sort of initiatives. So that's the first project we are busy with at the moment. That's the public transport enforcement unit. The second project is looking at implementing a technology solution on our buses. And the appropriate technology as well. So looking to improve surveillance on our buses and response times, but at the same time aid in the identification and then the apprehension, hopefully and then further later down the road the conviction of perpetrators. So technology that brings in live video streaming via saloon cameras and inter-store cameras, panic buttons for the drivers to enable them to alert the control room if there's an emergency happening, as well as ANPR cameras are being considered now for the buses. The addition of the ANPR will add another set of eyes on our roads. So there's a lot of benefits to this project, which is broader than just the specific bus attack response. The ANPR cameras will give us so much eyes on our road. So it won't be not just a set of extra eyes, but a whole fleet of eyes basically, and will greatly assist our law enforcement agencies. So this is a live project, and installation has already commenced of the CCTV on these buses. The project 3 is a joint communications and media campaign. So this project is really aimed at changing those world views, if I could call it that, currently within our communities. So we want this to be quite an ambitious venture, seeking to sort of inform and empower our commuters, but at the same time, we want to put these criminals on notice and tell them that the buses are being watched and are off limits. There's this perception, when I talk about world views, there's this perception currently out there that buses are government. This is some of the feedback that we've gotten. Buses are government. the insurance will cover, don't worry, you know, they'll get their money back again. And buses are essentially an easy target, and the victims as well, you know, the victims are basically invisible. They refuse to go and testify. They refuse to go and even as far as going to the police station to lay a criminal case. So the victims are almost invisible. You know, and this needs to change. In the whole narrative needs to change. So a project team has been formed. Discussions have already been held between the various stakeholders, and we sort of have a few dates that we are working towards before we started rolling out this campaign. So the rebriefing was actually scheduled for today. I didn't have feedback from that yet. So it's something which is in progress now, and you should see something kicking off quite soon. The fourth project is the fare box security enhancement. This is basically a target hardening initiative. We know that the cash on the buses is a target for criminals. The amounts being stolen aren't huge, to be honest, you know, and so we need to make it even less rewarding and a lot more difficult to steal that money or to rob the money. So Golden Arrow are currently busy with a project to install these cash drop boxes onto buses, which will make it virtually impossible to remove the cash from the buses. You know, that said, that the challenge of paying your fares when boarding is still not ideal. You would eventually like to move to a cashless system or advanced purchase of tickets system or something to that time. But so until such time, there'll still be an element of change on the buses. And when I talk about change, I mean if the fare is 17 Rand for argument's sake, and you pay with a 50 Rand, you still need to get change. So that will still be a sort of an issue in the short term, but we believe that making the money, or at least the bulk of the money, unavailable would make robbing a buses a lot less lucrative. The final project, last but not least, I think easily one of the most challenging of the lot. The idea here is really looking at that corridor environment and the environment along a number of these corridors that are most attacked. The idea here is to discourage and impede criminal behavior, while at the same time creating an environment that encourages ownership and pride in our public transport system. You know, at the moment there's a world of difference between the facilities provided for my city compared to that of Golden Arrow. So you know, we're asking the question, what can we do in a sort of a corridor-based response to this? So what this project envisages are improvements, as I said, implemented on a corridor basis to bus stops, potentially bus shelters, terminal points, some roadworks even. And the initial focus would be sort of your quick win, smaller projects, such as improving the lighting along certain areas, especially now as we're approaching winter time. Vegetation clearing, removing hiding spots for criminals. Because we've heard some stories factual accounts where these criminals hide in bushes. So one will kind of sort of flag the bus down, and the others will hide in the bush. So we want to, you know, if there's bush there that can be removed, let's remove them. So vegetation clearing, improving signage, filling potholes, road markings. These all add to sort of creating a better environment and really putting everybody on notice to say that we are looking after our public transport systems. That's a lot. This is a very tricky area, obviously, and it needs coordination within the city and across various projects and maintenance programs as well. And already we've made some small wins. The city have already prioritized the worst affected corridors in their pothole repair program, which is currently underway, and they're going to be sort of filling in the worst areas along Government Bekkie and a number of the other corridors. So this is something which we are still working on. It's to inform this project further. I think we would like to create a visual sort of spatial representation of the crime incident data to aid any further prioritization work, so we can really focus our attention on the worst areas. So in summary, we have two foundation projects, which we are calling foundation projects. So, you know, criminals should never have the upper hand. They should always be looking over their shoulders. And our technology and enforcement units is we see like that as our sort of foundational and our sort of the base from which we will be working. And this will then be supported by a comprehensive communications and media strategy to really get it out there, with a measure of target hardening as well included with GABs, and then hopefully some environmental enhancements to basically we want to claim back the space in these corridors, and we should be maintaining our assets as well as a matter of pride as well. So the next steps for us, as I've mentioned before, these 5 projects aren't the be all and end all. It's the first sort of steps one you want to take towards achieving the outcomes that we desire. And the important thing for us now as a commuter group is we need to keep the momentum going, and we need to equally be rapid in our responses. So we know some of these projects have been on the sort of back burner for a while now, or at least being discussed about for a while now. So we really want to be more rapid in our responses, and we want to make sure that these projects get fast tracked and implemented, so we can start seeing a difference, but then also learning some lessons from them and adapt them to be able to be a bit more effective. Thank you. That's all I have today.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Members, as indicated in the beginning of the meeting, I'm going to allow all presentations and submissions made before I turn or provide you with an opportunity to ask questions. So we're going to go straight into the next presentation from the City of Cape Town. Mr. Kutsia, if you could please flight the presentation. And then I'll hand over to Alderman Smith to take us through the presentation. Okay.
Chairperson, if you can just give me a little while. I was struggling to open it up from where you sent it to me.
No, it's fine. Mr. Kutsia, I see it has been flighted, so it's fine.
Okay, there we go. Thanks, Chair.
All right, Alderman Smith.
Chairperson, Mr. Neil Arends is going to talk you through the presentation, and I see Regan Melody has joined as well.
All right.
From the City of Cape Town Transport Department. I think he's acting ED at the moment.
All right, Alderman Smith, would you like to make any introductory remarks, or can we go straight into the presentation?
Chair, to save your committee time, I'm happy to keep my comments until afterwards.
All right, thank you very much. So we'll go straight into the presentation.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good afternoon, Chair, honourable members, colleagues. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Allow me to please take the committee through our public transport commuter safety initiative, which relates to the bus safety project. And just for purposes of introduction, the city a few years ago tried a pilot project having, through our externally funded officer program, having some of the law enforcement staff on GABS buses in order to ensure an improvement in safety. The pilot project was seen as successful, and obviously last year the city entered into discussions with Golden Arrow Bus Services as well as provincial government to see whether it can be rolled out on a more sustained basis. Obviously, as Faisal Williams alluded to in his presentation that just finished, there is a need to have these sort of projects on a more longer term sustainable basis, and therefore this initiative that the city engaged the role players with last year was to try to see if we can't roll it out over a 3-year period and see if we can test over a 3-year period if there's a real impact that we can have. So allow me to just take you through. This will obviously I'll quickly do a background in introduction, problem analysis, project overview, implementation challenges that we've experienced with the project, and then the way forward. I'll have a discussion on that. With regards to background and introduction, the City of Cape Town currently has a transport enforcement unit running, which incorporates the different public transport teams, focusing on the mini and the minibus taxis, buses, meter sedan taxis, as well as obviously the protection of our MyCity routes and stations. Golden Arrow Bus Services are experiencing similar safety problems that our MyCity have on the routes, which obviously causes commuter fear, and that does not bode well for trying to deal with our congestion problem and moving private vehicle users over to public transport at the end of the day. And obviously, similar to how my city has experienced a few challenges, they also have damages even more so than our My City buses with regards to the burning of their buses. It is against this backdrop that the city, GABS, and the Western Cape Department of Transport and Public Works last year started considering a joint venture with a focus obviously on improving safety on identified high-risk routes, which obviously indirectly improves on the safety of commuters as well. This initiative goes toward the establishing of a bus safety detail, which I am part of, confirmed that we were on the right track with trying to get this going, and all the work that has been done, which Faisal Williams explained in his presentation, just reiterated the fact that this is a need, and it is something that we definitely have to focus on. So the initiative goes toward the establishing of this. My apologies, Chair.
My apologies for interrupting you. I just got a request. If you could please enlarge the presentation to 100% or in presentation mode. There's a request from one of the members. Or to full view, screen view, full screen view.
Acrobat chairperson has under view, there is a full screen option under the view setting.
Chair, is that better? I had it in that mode now.
No, sir, it's still exactly the same. Members, can I just get an indication? Are you able to all see the presentation? Honourable van der Westhuizen?
Yes, thank you, Chair. As long as they continue with this font size. On the previous presentation, there were some one or two screens with layouts that was unfortunately not quite clear or visible on my screen. But if this one continues with this font size, it would be fine.
Right. Are there any other members that want to that's not able to see it?
No, we can see it, Chair. We can continue.
Thank you very much, sir. You can continue.
No problem, Chair. Continuing with the background, the City of Cape Town, the Transport Enforcement Unit, I already stated what is the focus behind this, obviously improving safety. Continuing on from that, the initiative goes toward establishing a bus safety detail within the city's standing Transport Enforcement Unit, which I alluded to ensure, firstly, support to SAPS, who is the major mandate holder for safety, in ensuring an improved commuter safety on the bus network, and then secondly, delivering effective and efficient enforcement response towards crime through the deployment of this law enforcement officers on a shift basis, which obviously will be informed by a crime pattern and crime threat analysis. With regards to problem analysis, Chair, there was an analysis done by the city's strategic information management system or team, which had a look at robberies in across areas in our city. And we found that the majority of the robberies are actually taking place in the Philippi and the Kailicha areas, with 30.2 and 28.1% respectively. Taken that further, some of the analysis that was done on GABS robbery incidences, it was found that you can easily identify hotspots, and that's also some of the information that we shared through the PDIA process to try to come up with sort of solutions, and it was easy to see where you can sort of jump in to have a focused approach on certain things. We did some further crime pattern analysis identifying times, but that was also alluded to already. So just with regards to the project overview, in support of the creation of a safe and secure environment for the optimal functioning of bus services, because that's really what we are focused on. The city's project aims then to recruit and train, resource and deploy 40 law enforcement officers with a supervisory capacity consisting of 4 inspectors and 1 principal inspector. There's just an organogram of of the layout of what I just explained, just to make it easier to understand. And as I alluded to earlier, the city has the Transport Enforcement Unit, which already has the necessary 3 teams running: the Public Transport Interchange team, the Traffic Services team, and the Bus Rapid Transit team, which is the My City team. So a 4th leg will be added if this project launches to the Transport Enforcement Unit, called the Bus Safety Team. So the TEU will then consist of these 4 teams within that structure. Some of the key factors for the success that we've identified for this project is coordinated planning and a dedicated project team, because we've seen how things go haywire when there's fragmentation in how we plan and how we deploy the necessary plans that we have in place. Adequate funding is critical, and then effective communication between all relevant role players. SAPS being a critical partner in this, Chair, in both visible policing as well as crime intelligence, critical strategic partner in this initiative. The implementation challenges that we've experienced from last year onward. Yes, Chair.
It's me again. My apologies for another
Yes,
interruption. You're not moving the slides. So if you could, I think there's something on your screen that you need to close, because we're still stuck on slide 5. So you need to cancel and then move on to.
Chair, do you perhaps want me to flight the presentation quickly?
No, wait, Mr. Kutsia.
Okay.
Just give Mr. Orange an opportunity. You need to cancel the tab on your screen and then scroll to the slide that you're speaking to.
Chair, may I request that Mr. Kutsia perhaps manage the presentation?
Okay, Mr. Kutsia, can you then do so?
Chair, I'll do so. You must just unshare the screen quickly.
Chair, I've done so. I'll await.
All right, thank you. My apologies, members. If you just give us a couple of, there we go.
Which slide number are we on, Mr. Arendt?
I was dealing with the challenges to implementation, but I don't know which ones the committee did not see.
Mr. Arendse, can you continue where you were? And members, with your indulgence, we'll make sure that the slide that we missed, I don't want to take us back.
Chair, it's not a problem. It's not a problem. Is this where we've left off, where the committee still saw what was happening? My apologies for that.
No, we missed you on slide 5.
It goes quite fast, so I can start from slide 5 and move with indulgence of the committee.
All right.
The problem analysis.
Yes, if you can not repeat what you have already alluded to, but so that we can just move on to.
No problem, Chair.
All right.
The next slide can go up. Whoever's driving, that just shows the robberies per area. The analysis that was done by SIMS, just the GABS incident data that we've analyzed and had a look at to try to identify hotspots. The next slide will show the same. There's just the times robberies of the day to identify patterns. The overview of the project, starting to explain if we can go, that through this project, obviously, optimal functioning of the bus services environment is critical. We seek to deploy the 40 officers with 4 inspectors and 1 principal inspector as supervisors. That's just the organogram for that, Chair. The next slide will show where they will be deployed within the Transport Enforcement Unit, which already has the other 3 teams. So the bus safety team will just be a 4th leg to the Transport Enforcement Unit, which is currently functioning in the city of Cape Town. Next slide. I've explained the key factors to the success of the project: the planning, adequate funding, no fragmented planning, and effective communication between all relevant role players. The critical importance of SAPS being a partner to this. And then we get to implementation challenges. The next slide is just to introduce that. We had 2 issues, and that was determination on risk in terms of civil liability and related matters. A legal opinion was obtained, and the legal opinion has been shared with safety and security, and we are sharing that also with GABS. GABS from their side also went to obtain a legal opinion, and they are sharing that with us via the provincial office as well. The second issue was baseline funding for supervisory structure. We were unable through this time to appoint the supervisory structure and have the project launch because that could not be done via grant funding based resources. Obviously, our normal baseline was affected due to COVID-19 expenditures, which had serious impacts on our budgets. In the next slide, I just want to explain the way forward, and I believe that'll also be the last slide. Going forward, we'll finalize the investigation into potential funding sources for the supervisory capacity. That is an ongoing issue. Pending the above, we'll start launching the project recruitment and related drives, develop an evaluation toolkit for the project, and obviously maintain effective working relationships between parties is an ongoing way forward necessity. That is it from my side, Chair. I appreciate the indulgence of the committee. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Arendse. Thank you very much, members. We move on to Golden Arrow Bus Services.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the outlook is definitely a bit more positive than when we last spoke. No doubt that is due to a lot of hard work and effort that's gone in by some of the members that's present here today. Faisal was right, there is a bit of good news. Robberies are certainly less. The 5-week average of 8 robberies came down to just over 3 at the moment, and last week was the first week in many months that we did not have any robberies. I have to commend the Provincial Department of Transport for their willingness to assist us, and especially their spirit in which they are doing it, and then also to find the funds to fit these cameras to our buses. Just to give you a very brief update, the surveillance cameras is not just a question of ordering the cameras and fitting them. Electrical looms need to be made that fits the specification of the manufacturer, otherwise you risk fires on the bus. Panic buttons need to be designed and manufactured. We've done 15 buses up to now, but we think everything is in line for us to start fitting 25 cameras per week from now on. And then with the Drop Safe project, which is our internal project, once again, it takes time to design the electronics that goes into the safe. It opens up at certain times and closes at certain times, and then to order the safes. There was a 2-month waiting period for the safes to arrive. We are now also in a position where we can roll them out quite quickly. I don't know if my colleague Derek Meyer wants to update us on anything on the Public Transport Enforcement Unit, but I think Neil mentioned all this, so I don't think that's necessary. And lastly, Chair, I can just say that there is unfortunately a huge expectation from our passengers and from our staff that we will solve this problem. So we cannot relax for one moment. The projects that Neil mentioned and as well as Faisal mentioned are micromanaged on our side. We are doing whatever we can to speed up the implementation of these projects. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I see the hand of Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon to all. I just want to add, maybe just to add that I also want to thank both the province and the city for their input and for the position that we're in at the moment. I do want to, however, bring something to the table, and one of the things that is probably the biggest problem in trying to get rid of this headache is the fact that we've had some arrests made. But then once those arrests are made, that's where it ends. So there's been no convictions that we know of. We are certainly trying to push hard to find out from different entities what has happened to the cases and the arrests that has been made, and but to date we haven't been able to get to the bottom of it. I think one of the facts that when you arrest and you identify with all these incidents and the fact that all the inputs that we're going to put in, we're going to identify people, and if they are arrested, it's important that the conviction is also pushed up the rates as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very, very much for all the presenters. Members, I'm now going to provide you an opportunity to ask questions. Alderman Smith.
Chair, thank you. Do you require the video to stay off, or can it be on during our answers? Do you require it to be on?
No, I don't. I think with the indulgence of the committee members, I'm going to request that all videos remain off for the stability of the network. Alderman Smith, I don't know if you want to make any comments before I hand over to questions to the members.
Chair, in response to the presentations that were done now and the very important issue that Mr. Mayor raises, this is a big bugbear that is making life very difficult. There is a massive fleet, what I think about 3,500 Golden Arrow buses. It's a massive fleet to cover over a very large geographic area. The small intervention that we were able to make during our original pilot project and the subsequent venture with Golden Arrow Bus Service, and I must commend them for their willingness to explore and experiment with different modalities, will very rarely touch sides on all of that. So when you have the rare opportunity to make an arrest, it is something that you are, it is so rare or so difficult to achieve that arrest that it is absolutely imperative that a conviction follow. So we are tremendously frustrated by the collapsing cases around this. The head of the NPA, Shamila Batois, regularly makes the comment that the failure of policing or the challenge with crime in South Africa is about the convictions, and the challenges in the criminal justice system. We usually look for those solutions in the policing and visible policing environment, but I'm afraid much of what is failing us at this stage is in the less scrutinized criminal justice environment. And that is very true also for these cases. So the city is now in the process of developing our strategic information management service and fleshing it out, and also investing in the additional investigators in our safety and security investigations unit. The majority of their function is watching briefs. So they will do watching briefs on all the LEAP arrests, all the LEAP officers that we've deployed into these areas. It doesn't help to achieve all those extra arrests the whole time, and firearm arrests and drug arrests, but then nothing comes of it. So it's watching what happens with those cases and assisting where we can in the 10 area priority areas, but at the same time also supporting projects like this to make sure we track where those cases go, make sure that they follow through to conviction. Sometimes the things that make the cases collapse are really simple things that can be prevented. So critical to get the convictions, because it's not a very large group of people driving this particular crime pattern. It's a small group of people who become experienced and skilled in doing this. So you have a syndicated or organized criminal behavior which we can interdict. Thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you very much. I'm now going to, members, allow you an opportunity to pose your questions. can I please ask that you identify the presentation and pose the question to the presenter, as well as indicate the page number of the slide, if you're able to, just so that we can streamline these questions. I see Honourable van der Westhuizen, Honourable Maseko in this round of questions, and Honourable Nkondlo. Members, are there any further any indication for the first round of questions? All right, if not, then Honourable Mvimbi then.
Honourable Chairperson, can I start?
I actually saw Honourable van der Westhuizen first. Honourable van der Westhuizen.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for the presenters, and particularly for the hard work behind those presentations. And Chair, I'm not a security expert, but with my limited knowledge, I think I want to compliment the role players on the collection and the use of the crime data. I think that in itself reminds me of the old adage of you can't manage what you can't measure. So hopefully we can start managing the situation with the data that we've got. My first one is, I do know that in the past there's been talk about the possibility to move towards non-cash payment options, or at least, you know, if it can't be an exclusive non-cash environment, that at least, as in some international cities, you know, regular commuters can at least pay via card, etc. What is prohibiting us from implementing that and starting to use that? Because my impression has been that we actually are looking long term at an integrated payment option, whereby, you know, not only buses but also taxis, and hopefully eventually also commuter trains trips would be payable via card or non-cash payment options. And it seems to me there are with new technology, various options that are doing the rounds, and the options are actually, you know, increasing by the day. The second one, and I want to refer to what Alderman Smith has said, that, you know, it seems to me from what he has said that he's referred to a small group of repeat offenders, and my question at this point in time is what are the chances of being caught for such an offender currently? Because it seems to me as if you know, we have a small group of people that become quite au fait with this, and they know the modus operandi and where to strike it, etc. If that is the case, what is the possibility of installing, particularly on these, can I call it dangerous routes, some facial recognition software? I'm just surprised by how the technology regarding that is also developing. And what I would like to see is an alarm going off somewhere if somebody that has previously been linked to a robbery on a bus embarks on such a trip, and hopefully that will allow law enforcement agencies to be alerted, and then to be able to act either hopefully proactively, or at least be ready for that person when he or she gets or disembarks from that bus. Thank you, Chair.
Right, thank you very much. Honourable van der Westhuizen, can I ask that you lower your hand? Honourable Maseko.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, I just want to find out, we have previously heard the Premier announcing that a single transport authority would be developed for the Western Cape. Now, if the department can please tell us if there have been any recent developments on this. And I mean, we understand that it requires sign-off from national government. Has that taken place? I would love to hear that. And will the Transport Authority help us to deliver safer transport in the province, including for the Golden Arrows bus services. And another question, I think, for the department also, has the department received any support from the national counterpart in devising its mitigation efforts with the city and the Golden Arrows bus services or not? I think the last one, it will be, the reality is that trains are barely functioning in Western Cape, and that is a fact. I would love to hear, has this impacted service providers like the Golden Arrows? And if that is the case, how so? And I think that's the last one for now, Chair. If you can, I can get the answers for those. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Maseko. Honourable Nkondlo.
No, thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentations. Let me try and run through mine. I think in the first presentation of the department, I would like to know, I've seen there, I think they are indicating some of the personal burden from the individual commuters that they're experiencing. Were these costs or can they be quantified in any way versus the business cost to date that has been suffered by both Golden Arrow as a company, but also the related cost to the commuters? And actually, what has been the discussions, I think, in the response of how this particular cost, gets to be undertaken, whether there would be any change, because I didn't see in the 5 project anything that tries, I can see from the company point of view, putting in extra measures in terms of security and others. I'm not sure how do we deal with this and cost or burdens, especially to the commuters. Which I think takes me to the next question around the stakeholders. When one look at the stakeholders, I see it's mainly the City of Cape Town entities, including Golden Arrow, and I think I've seen in one slide SEPS. I think it's also related to the question Member Maseko is asking, because I was going to ask the issue of an intergovernmental relations in this regard, because one does not seem to see this the national participation, especially because there are issues of legislation and regulations that are mentioned, I think, in the initial part when the problem analysis is being made, but one does not see where is there an IGR sort of response to this particular matter, given the competence of transport as a shared between the province and national, and now we're dealing with issues at a local government level. But second to that issue of stakeholders is that, once again, I'm not seeing, whilst in one slide there's an issue of community ownership, but I'm not seeing the participation of the community, both in terms of it as commuters, including, I think, workers who gets to be directly affected in terms of the criminal activities when somebody or a criminal gets into a bus. For the first person, I think, who gets to be the primary culprit would be the driver as an employee, but also the passengers in that bus. But I'm not seeing, in terms of the response, how these critical stakeholders are part and parcel of influencing or informing the type of response strategies, and what role is there for them to play in realizing this community ownership, but also in the participation of this as also a critical stakeholder that gets to be severely affected by what is happening in the public transport system. Then I think in the presentation of the city around the strategy itself, I'm interested to understand actually the different elements. I had, I think, in the last presentation, I think some mention of some baseline funding for supervisory structure. But I think my interest would be, what is the cost of implementing and realizing the 5 elements or 5 projects of this bus safety strategy being proposed, and where is the money coming from in terms of funding these elements? Are they being funded individually by the city? Is it a joint fund? If maybe more can be explained in terms of that. But also, I think when one was looking or was listening to the first presentation, in terms of once again analyzing the problem, I'm happy. I think the mention of how this is integrated into the traffic enforcement strategy, because I was really interested in, and maybe that answer can be provided, of how this particular response is actually embedded in the entire crime prevention strategy of the city, of the province, and nationally. Because indeed, some of the issues that are being raised, including, I think, where you look at the profile of the problem, it's more on the poor, from the poor communities, and which for me begs, I think, the question on our spatial planning, our broad public infrastructure development. So I'm interested on this conversation with other non-safety cluster related departments, if there is any of that conversation. Maybe such could be explained to me. My last one, Chair, is whether, listening to Alderman Smith, whether when you look now at the practicalities, once this system is working, who would then do the arrests in this case? And I'm just, if you can just get into my very simplistic head, if something of this nature happens in a bus, who gets to arrest that person or that criminal? If it's these officers we are referring to, what legal standing and authority are they having? I'm hearing that watching briefs would be hearing those cases, but I'm just trying now to understand, just from the first level of arrest where the case needs to be lodged, how will that system work, if maybe some clarity can be provided in that regard? Thank you very much, Chair, at this point.
Thank you very much, Honourable Nkondlo. Honourable Mvimbi.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Honourable Nkondlo, can you please lower your hand?
Thank you very much. I think you must, where I'm sitting, I seem to be having serious problem with networks, because now and then I get cut off. So if that happened, please understand that, because the area I'm at, it seems not to be having good network. Thank you very much to the presentation. I welcome it. I think it's very informative and it's actually very helpful. I think it's quite a very good initiative in terms of safety in public transport. And I like the relationship, the tripartite relationship of the Department of Transport and Public Works, the City of Cape Town, and Golden Arrow buses. But especially that the city seems to be having what is called the Transport Enforcement Unit. And I saw in the presentation that that Transport Enforcement Unit does not only cover buses, it also goes to my city buses, as well as even to mini taxis. But that's exactly where my question is. Now, we seem to be having all other stakeholders in tech. I see even the SEPs in the presentation seems to be on board, is also being involved in this. But I think also the main stakeholder, really one of the biggest stakeholders, we should not, I seem not to have heard it being mentioned, is actually the taxi industry. While I know that very well that this is more about buses, but it does not necessarily mean that if it is about buses, they must also not be involved, either in the form of their leadership or in the form of their representative structure that they are having. Just my question is to just check whether in all the stakeholders that have been mentioned, to what extent are they also involved in this issue of safety, of public safety in public transport? Because some of these criminal activities, actually, sometimes they just go beyond just the attack on buses. They also go to the taxis as well. I would like to check whether between the city and the department, do they also have a similar plan as well, so far as public transport safety is concerned? Because some of the criminal element, as I said, is not only about attacking. You find that when you go to poorer areas, there is even people who are actively involved in criminal activities such as extortion, whereby even some of, and it was shocking at some point when it was reported that there are ladies who are actually involved in transporting school children. But then in order for them to do that, they must get permission from some taxi association in order to conduct that. So that's some kind of extortion and criminal element. So it does not only, it's not only confined in buses as well. I just want to check whether to what extent are we also involved in the taxi association as stakeholders in the issue of safety in public transport. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, members. That is round one. How I'm going to deal with the answers is that I'm going to allow the department to respond, and then I'll move over to the City of Cape Town and then to Golden Arrow. So all the questions posed to the various presenters can be answered in when you have when it's your opportunity to do so. I see the hand of Honourable Alderman Smith. Alderman Smith.
Sorry, Chair, my keyboard resisted unmuting. Audible to you, sir?
You're audible.
Thank you very much. So the facial recognition analytics is definitely an option. I think the problem is that very often the persons wear caps or hoodies and are attuned to the location of cameras. So I don't know how often that.
Alderman Smith, I don't know if it's just me, but I seem to have lost you. Members, can you give me an indication if it's just me?
We've also lost the Alderman.
Yes.
Yeah, we also lost him.
Alderman Smith, we've lost you. All right, while we're trying to get Alderman Smith back on the line, ICT, Mr. Kutsia, if you can please assist with that. In the meantime, I'm going to hand it to the department. Alderman Smith, are you back?
Yes, apologies, my connection dropped there for a moment. I humbly apologize. So I don't know where you lost me, but I said that the facial recognition is definitely possible. It is implemented in many countries, and I can confirm in the US that I saw a system like that. I know for a fact China has widespread implementation in public transport interchanges and on public transport. And in Transport for London spoke about such analytics and the use thereof as well. Because of the manner in which Golden Arrow onboards its passengers at bus stops along the roadway, you'd probably largely have to rely on the cameras being on the buses. That creates some challenges in terms of transmitting of the signal, and whether you do on-site processing of the facial analytics because you don't have strong enough telephony or connectivity systems in our country to transmit those heavy loads of data. So that creates additional costs with the installation per bus. But it could be an experiment we could try. I'd be willing to. We might be better off There's always a cost-benefit analysis for what you spend those resources on, and one would have to balance the value of that against actually rolling out more resources on the bus. There might also be some of the CCTV and analytics suppliers who would be quite willing to partner with GABS as a company in this regard by way of demonstrating the efficacy of their projects. They often approach the city requesting to do so pro bono without initial cost. Then, Chair, to Honourable Member Nkondlo, the city, aside from the during the pilot project, the original proof of concept and the pilot project with GABS, aside from what they were paying for, we also added staff from our own, and on some days that grew up to 80 members, I'm told. So significant costs were created over time, but we deemed that to be absolutely worthwhile undertaking to see if we could make an impact on the Golden Arrow bus crisis. My sense of it is that you need so much resources to secure every bus because of the large volume of buses, that one is better off focusing on driving the conviction issue very aggressively when you do manage to get arrests, rather than than constantly trying to recatch the same perpetrators, because the financial implications of that large size of operational deployment will be prohibitive. And then to Honourable Mvimbi, the taxi industry are very much also victims of the extortion and violence and attacks. We do have taxi owners and drivers who approach us in some areas complaining about gangsters or rival associations practicing extortion on them, and who ask for protection from casual crime on their taxis. We have tried to accommodate them in our planning where possible. For instance, in the Elsies River area and Bishop Laver's area, where there for a long-standing period was a complaint, and we work with SAPS on their extortion task team. But physically, you would need a very, very large amount of resources to cover the thousands of taxis on the road. So I think with all of these things, our investment there is probably better made on the crime intelligence side and on the watching briefs and the oversight of the prosecutions to make sure your arrests lead to convictions, rather than trying to securitize all those many moving vehicles. We are probably better off offering rewards and following up on those rewards and trying to get results there, because otherwise the financial implications would far exceed what government and possibly the private sector could do together. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Smith. I'm going to hand over to the department.
Through you, Chair, thank you very much, and thank you to the members for the various questions. So, if I may, I'll try and start with some of the questions that are posed that I can respond to. Through you, Chair, the first question to pick up on around the Transport Authority aspects and the queries that were raised in that regard. I can indicate that our department is working towards the establishment of an authority. We have drafted a business case in order to help to guide internal discussions that are currently underway in this regard, understanding what the various options are, what the pros and cons are of the different formulations of an authority. Once that particular business case has been sufficiently dealt with internally and presented to the Provincial Cabinet for consideration, then, as through your Chair, Member Maseko indicated, it would need to be submitted to National Government for their consideration and for it to be dealt with through the necessary legislative processes. We do believe as a department that an authority of one form or another will certainly help to improve developing a safe, reliable system. It provides for better coordination and help to be able to drive some of the aspects of integration, and acknowledging, of course, that public transport from a provincial point of view crosses municipal boundaries, and there are certain interventions that make sense to be implemented once from a provincial perspective, that therefore don't have to be repeated from municipality to municipality in terms of an investment and a cost driver. So that is something that our team is working on. In response to, or the question about national government assistance in what we've put forward, I need to indicate that as a department, to my knowledge, unless the team can indicate otherwise, we haven't directly approached the National Department of Transport. The contract around Golden Arrow bus services transport provisions is between our department and Golden Arrow. And that as a result, it's with ourselves and with the city in partnership, as well as Golden Arrow, that we've been unpacking this and working together. That doesn't mean that we can't approach national and interact with them. It's just something that we haven't yet done so. Understanding, as you would have seen in the first presentation that Mr. Williams made, the process that we've gone through and how we formulated what we've currently put forward, as he's mentioned, in terms of the 5 projects, does not mean that those are the only projects, but really just the ones that we're starting with, which I think through you, Chair, then picks up with the question posed by Member Nkondlo around the community ownership, which I think, as you mentioned, is a critical part of the process. And we are hoping that through our communication processes, as well as then the next steps around this particular type of approach, which includes the interviews, accessing information, which also included, I can say, looking at what's come through from community members through social media platforms and so on, that we're able to generate and get a better understanding of the impact of this type of crime on people's daily lives. So through that process, then we would also be able to identify new projects or next projects where we may need to ask and approach the National Department of Transport for further support, whether it's from a legislative or regulatory context that has been mentioned. The question that was posed through your Chair by Member Nkondlo around the burden on the passengers and whether that is quantifiable versus the cost to the business. I'm not certain whether that type of information or assessment has been done. So I will have to ask whether our colleagues from Golden Arrow have got a sense, clearly, because they would be able to know what sort of numbers from the robbing of buses, what sort of fare box revenue has been stolen, and whether, if passengers do make cases about what the value is of the belongings that they've lost. But as was mentioned in the first presentation by Mr. Williams, it does appear as that there are often that passengers are loath to actually make cases and therefore obviously provide detailed information about what of their belongings has been stolen. The question that was posed about who does the arrests, I think I'd leave that to our city colleagues to respond to. And then if I may, through your Chair, just to add to Alderman Smith's response about the minibus taxi industry and the extortion aspects, I can also indicate that our department participates and actually is a co-chair with the South African Police Services with the Transport Priority Committee, which feeds up into the Prov joint structures, and the matters around the safety, the security, the extortion matters are very high on the agenda at the moment in the discussions, including the South African Police Services in response to the minibus taxi industry. So I can also indicate that that is something that is receiving a lot of attention, certainly from our department and staff within our department, working with SAPS and others as far as those matters are concerned. Chair, I think those are the ones that I'm able to initially respond to I trust I haven't left too many out, and would perhaps then ask if it's possible to hand over to our city colleagues and to our GABS colleagues, who I'm sure would be able to provide feedback on the very first question about the collection of cash and the non-cash payment options that GABS may or may not have available in terms of smart cards. Thank you, Chair.
Right, thank you very much, HOD. I'm going to hand over to Golden Arrow Bus Service first, and then if there's any additions by the City of Cape Town.
Thank you, Chair. Francois Meyer speaking. Honourable van Westhuizen, yes, we do have smart card technology. Passengers can buy a prepaid weekly or monthly card. The problem lies that we are carrying a lot of passengers that's really poor and almost work from hand to mouth. So they just have enough money to get onto a bus to make it to a job somewhere. They work maybe in a garden somewhere, then they come back with the cash they earned there. And we have 60,000 passengers that still chooses to buy a cash fare on the bus. That is despite us giving them a 50% discount should they buy a weekly or a monthly prepaid card. So that is the problem. These people are unbankable. They don't have debit cards. They only have the cash that they work for. And therefore, the question becomes one of, do you ignore these passengers and take away that option for them? With 60,000 passengers per day, we still think it is worthwhile to give them the option to buy cash on the bus, although we are marketing the discount on the weekly and monthly fares. And we will just therefore try to put these drop safes on the buses to make sure that the buses are not dropped for the cash on them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any additions from the City of Cape Town?
Chair, if I may.
Yes, you may.
Chair, from the city side, there was a question around stakeholders that came up. SAPS was identified in the presentation that was done by the city. Just to bring clarity, there are other stakeholders that we obviously do engage with and that are needed. Even the PDIA process have a specific focus on all stakeholders that needs to be engaged and communication strategies around that. But specific to this, the reason SAPS is directly indicated there is because of that critical role that they play. And I just wanted to make mention of that and how important that is, that role player is key to the success of the project. Second question I picked up from one of the honourable members is regarding cost, whether the cost will be borne jointly by all parties. And yes, indeed, the cost will be borne jointly by all three parties for this specific project. And there was a question also around arrests, who will make the actual arrests if anything goes wrong on the bus, and the enforcement officers that are deployed.
Standing Committee for Provincial Transport. It's Bonaparte Transport.
That ICT, please mute all participants.
May I continue, Chair?
Yes, you may. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just lastly, the question I picked up around the arrests, the law enforcement officers that will be deployed to do high visibility patrols on these routes, they are empowered to do the necessary arrests, taking the individuals to the police station, do the necessary A1 statements that would be required for that. So they are empowered, and in fact, they have received extension of powers as well, issued by the Department of Justice. So they are well able and empowered to do that. And the legal opinion that I referred to also related to issues around that, whether that would be an impediment, yes, no, if they operate on or respond to the GAPS buses incidents, yes or no, and that was also cleared through the legal opinion that we've obtained. I believe HOD Gooch answered the question relating to the issue of taxis and the Transport Priority Committee that is prioritizing the extortion issue. Thank you very much, Chair.
Right, thank you very much. Members, are there any follow-up questions? Honourable van der Westhuizen.
Yes, thank you, Chair. May I proceed?
Yes, you may.
Thank you, Chair. To Mr. Meyer, thank you very much for that information regarding weekly and monthly tickets. But as your colleague, Mr. Francois Meyer, indicated, obviously we understand the situation that, the discount for weekly and monthly tickets apply to people that want to commute to work, on a daily basis, and where I presume they undertake the same trip every day from Monday to Friday. My question now is just, those people that undertake, I almost want to say ad hoc trips, are they able to pay via a cashless option? Because I think, and perhaps you've done some research in that regard, I think there's quite a vast market of people that, let's say 3 days in a week, want to travel on the one route, 2 days on another route, or perhaps, a different route every day of the week in different directions, because they are gardeners or domestics working at various people or households once a week. And you will see I'm still trying to find a way for us to, or reason for us to move to a cashless option. I can just imagine if those people could also get a discount, that many more people would be choosing to go via a card payment system. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honourable Nkondlo.
Yes, Chair. I think perhaps a golden arrow is, I think HOD requested that maybe they can answer the questions of costs, if cost burden, of the type of criminality, if they do have that from their own numbers. But I would like to say, Chair, as in following up, that perhaps I think on the question of the cost and the funding of these 5 projects, as it is said that the such would be shared, if perhaps that information can be shared with us. What are those costs specifically? Who is going to be paying for what? If that information can be shared with us, including the legal opinion that actually explains, the extension, I think, authority or legal status to those enforcement officers. So I would appreciate if we can, I think that legal opinion can be shared so that it can shed even more light to us in terms of the legalities around the project itself. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Nkondlo. We'll note that in our deliberations at the end of this meeting, if that's in order. Golden arrow, but I think Honourable van der Westhuizen's follow-up was directed to Golden Arrow Bus Service.
Thank you, Chair, if I may. Honourable van der Westhuizen, yes, you're totally correct. We do have lots of passengers that travel to different points, and many years ago we've already identified that. So at this moment in time, they are able to purchase a product in the same way with the same discounts and be able to travel to different points or different destinations during the course of the week as required by them. And further to that is something that we're busy looking at as well. And we understand that a huge part of passengers cannot get away from purchasing with cash at the moment. But we are at the moment as part of this whole project to get cash off the vehicle is to look for different alternatives. Lots of people have cell phones, and so opportunities to pay via SnapScan and the rest of those platforms is something that we're looking at to try and get more cash off the bus as we speak. So that is definitely something on the cards, and something that we're looking at on a daily basis to try and minimize the burden of cash on the buses. Just as an addition to the response from Jackie Gooch, and on the cost burden, I think Honourable Nkondlo asked the question about the costs of the losses to passengers. I just have to answer in two ways. One is the nature of the crime on the buses is such that these people that are on the buses and that are being robbed live in the same environments as the robbers. More often than not, they actually know who they are, and they fear for themselves and their safety as well. And we find it extremely difficult that if a vehicle is robbed, that the passengers actually go with the driver to the police station to make cases. So A, they either don't tell us what they lost, or B, they don't even arrive at the police station to make it known what they lost on the vehicle. So it's extremely difficult to actually justify the cost of the losses to the actual passengers. Thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you very much for the follow-up questions. Members, we have a bit of time, so I'm going to allow a second round of questions because I think it's very important, this discussion and engagement. So if there's any further questions, if you could just give me an indication. Can I please ask that you, for the second round, just keep it to 2 or 3 questions, because we still have committee admin thereafter. Honourable van der Westhuizen.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I think we need to acknowledge that currently we only have the buses and the taxis to a large extent to deal with in terms of a safe transport of Western Cape residents. But that the moment the trains are back in full operation, that the resources may have to be spread even thinner to cover all stations and intersections or interchanges, etc. So my first question is just, and I cannot let this opportunity go, to ask, what are our plans? Do we have contingency plans should the trains come back on in full flight or full force, full rail? And then secondly, Chair, it is my impression that the moment PRASA decided to halt or interrupt their train services, that vandalism actually, escalated. And I'm just basing that on the damage that I see here close to my home in Stellenbosch, where some of the overhead electrical lines are hanging low, and it seems to me as if the electricity must have been switched off, leaving that infrastructure even more vulnerable to theft and vandalism. So my question is, to what extent would we be able to step up the current efforts and not, take a step back in terms of our focus on buses the moment that PRASA comes back into full operation? And secondly, Chair, and I do know this is slightly off today's agenda, but what has been the experience once infrastructure is not put to daily use? Is there then an increase in damage or vandalism? Because I think we have some lessons to learn perhaps from the experience of PRASA, of what not to do in terms of suspending services for perhaps upcoming periods of increased lockdown, etc. And lastly, Chair, if we could, and again, I'm off agenda now, if we could get an indication of the plans with PRASA going forward, because from what I see here, the chances of the trains running beyond Stellenbosch soon seems to be extremely slim. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable van der Westhuizen. I allowed you some latitude with regards to going off agenda. Just for the committee's information, we are in the process of setting up an engagement with PRASA. So I'm going to allow the department to respond, but HOD, if you don't have all that information, there will be an opportunity at the next committee meeting to present on PRASA. Yeah, like I said, Honourable van der Westhuizen, and I think it's important questions, and it's affecting the citizens of this province now. So that's why I allowed that latitude just for all members. Members, before I hand over for a response, are there any further questions in this round? All right, HOD.
Through you, Chair, thank you very much, and thank you for the thought-provoking questions. And perhaps my responses are potentially based more on, I suppose, anecdote and experience than necessarily having the data specifically at hand to be able to back it up. So please allow me that latitude, if I may, in that particular context. That I do believe, and Mr. Williams made mention of it in his presentation, that we've seen a shifting of some of the crime and the perhaps opportunistic crime onto the bus system, particularly when the rail system is not operational. So we would have seen that the spike in number of incidents in the 2020 calendar year, based upon the analysis that was done, and as we well know, fundamentally for the bulk of the last calendar year, the rail system has not been operational, and when it did, it was coming back after lockdown, and based upon allowances from a national perspective, certain capacities to be available, and also then based upon what PRASA was able to respond to. I believe, based upon the information that I have seen not too long ago and what was shared, was that PRASA are certainly not in a situation to be able to bring the full rail system back in one big bang, if I could perhaps use that terminology, and that it is something that's going to have to be phased in step by step, particularly because in the point through you, Chair, that Honourable van der Westhuizen has mentioned about the vandalism that has occurred. And certainly, again, this is where, as I say, I don't have the data, but discussions and information that I've been informed of, certainly PRASA did see vandalism escalate, particularly through the lockdown periods where they were not allowed to operate. So through the rail reserves, and fundamentally, from what I've understood, it's as a result of there not really being people around. You don't have the eyes on the ground, and that then creates an opportunity for people to get up to mischief, so to speak, and the kind of vandalism that we see then taking place. So I am aware that in terms of PRASA's plans and what they'd presented a little while ago, they are looking at a fundamental step up from a safety and security perspective. And I believe that would probably be one of the core things that the committee would ask PRASA to present on when they do come to the committee, because they do have a plan. Whether they're able to implement it and the timeframes attached to it and stick to the timeframes, I think, is really the challenge that they tend to have. But certainly, I would agree with the point that when infrastructure isn't really utilized and services are not operational on a daily or fundamentally regular basis, you do tend to find damage occurring because you don't have the eyes in the area trying to keep a sight of what is going on. Understandably, though, if I may just say that almost on PRASA's behalf, under acknowledging that under the higher lockdown levels, and even as the lockdown levels were being lifted, there were still limitations for them in terms of a service about their operations. And therefore, even though other parts from a community or transport point of view that were operational, PRASA were not allowed to be, which obviously has created, I think, further dilemmas for them. Chair, that's what I'm able to respond to at this point in time.
Thank you very much, HOD. Honourable van der Westhuizen, I'm going to give you an opportunity if you have any follow-ups without creating a dialogue between yourself and the HOD. So please just bear that in mind.
No, thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for our HOD. Chair, I think the lesson that I take from what she's now also confirmed is that during future lockdown periods or periods of disruption, everything should be thrown at trying to maintain, even if it's a minimum level of service. And I think this also then applies to our bus services, our My City services. The moment that we don't offer that service, the moment people are not there, the eyes and ears, as she's put it, then our bus stations, etc., are just more vulnerable, and that hopefully the national government will keep that in mind. Should we ever experience something similar to what we experienced last year during the month of April. And I'm looking forward, Chair, and thank you for arranging that, for us to engage with PRASA again. I just hope, and because that's the part I didn't hear, that when the safety and security net needs to be spread even wider, that we would be able to cover then also our commuters that make use of a combination of bus and rail services. But thank you very much for that, Chair. It seems to me this is not the last word, and that we will be engaging with PRASA. Looking forward to that. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Honourable van der Westhuizen. Members, that brings us to the end of this engagement, unless there's anyone that's got a last burning question to any of the three stakeholders that's presented in the department, two stakeholders in the department. Well, if not, Minister, I'm going to allow you an opportunity if you have any closing remarks. HOD, if you have any closing remarks.
Through you, Chair, perhaps just to appreciate the committee's interactions, the questions that you've posed, and if I may, to assure the committee of the team's focus on this incredibly important matter. The fact that we've proposed and have shown you, as it stands, 5 projects, areas of work. As indicated by Mr. Williams, these are not the only ones. These are the starting points where we hope to be able to generate some gains and ultimately also buy-in and commitment of other stakeholders when we start to see that there are benefits being created through this. And through you, Chair, if I may, to our city colleagues and also to our colleagues from Golden Arrow, certainly my acknowledgement and appreciation of their participation and the collaboration and the collaborative style in which we are working. I do wish to express that. Thank you.
Right, thank you very, very much, HOD. On behalf of the committee, to Golden Arrow Bus Service, the City of Cape Town, and the department and Minister, thank you very, very much for this engagement. It's always good to have this sort of engagement, and it's good for the in the manner in which we could engage, and realizing that the services and the accountability is always in the interest of the citizens that we are elected to serve. So thank you very much for the engagement that we could have, and we look forward to a follow-up engagement in the near future. Minister, HOD, and the City of Cape Town, as well as Golden Arrow Bus Service, you're more than welcome to exit the meeting now. Members, if you could please remain online so that we can just deal with committee administration. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Chair. Bye-bye.
Right, thank you very much. Mr. Kutsia, can I please ask that you flag the minutes of the 18th of March 2021? Members, I'm going to deal with the minutes first of the previous meeting before dealing with resolutions from this meeting.
Chairperson, I'm just looking for it. Where did it go? Chairperson, please just bear with me. I don't know where it disappeared to now. Let me.
No problem.
Visible, Chair?
Indeed, visible. Thank you very much. Members, can you all see?
Yes,
Right.
Chair.
Thank you very much. Members, I table the draft minutes of the meeting of the 18th of March, page 1. Any edits or amendments? Page 2, any edits or amendments? If no edits or amendments, I table the minutes, the draft minutes of the 18th of March for adoption. Honourable van der Westhuizen.
I support that it be adopted.
Thank you very much. Is there a seconder for that proposal?
Seconded, Chair. Seconded, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Mvimbi. The minutes is duly adopted. Members, are there any resolutions emanating from the meeting that we just had? So you can just give me an indication.
Chairperson.
I see Honourable van der Westhuizen and then Honourable Mvimbi. My apologies, Honourable Mvimbi. I assume your hand function is not working. So Honourable van der Westhuizen, if I'll allow Honourable Mvimbi first.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. With your indulgence, as you, I will. I think one of the issues I like the point that was raised by Honourable van der Westhuizen regarding the issues of us having to have an update on the status of the rail transport in the Western Cape. I think it will be a good thing if maybe then we can extend that invitation to PRASA, and the same basis that we've been actually updated, been kept abreast on the previous presentation. Maybe we issued that kind of an invite as well. But also similarly, Chair, I think the same interest we have taken on the safety of our commuters in buses, we should also be take it in the same breath also on the taxi industry. But I know the taxi industry does not operate the same way as the bus operators are operating. Maybe also if we might also even extend some invite as well to have an engagement with them on the same concept, on the same issues that were raised here. Of course, that invite will most probably be going to to their association, or not their main association, that maybe they can also from their side tell us what effort or what initiative are they doing in terms of bringing safety into the public transport arena.
Right, thank you, Honourable Mvimbi. Honourable van der Westhuizen.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Honourable Mvimbi has taken some of the words from my mouth. So thank you very much, Honourable Mvimbi. We are on the same page. Chair, I would like PRASA, when they come, also to try and give us an indication of the extent of the damages caused during 2020 in terms of vandalism, theft, criminality. And then secondly, also if PRASA could share with us, what would they have preferred to do differently next time should such a similar interruption in services be forced upon them? Would they, for example, be in favor of a minimum service, even if they're only allowed to transport 10% or 20% of passengers, etc.? And then, Chair, I would also like to know about the PRASA staff members. Are they getting paid? What are they doing to earn their salaries currently in the absence of trains running? Or are they, suffering due to salary cuts, etc.? And is PRASA currently gainfully, utilizing the services of the staff members, and how many staff members are involved? And if they're not gainfully deployed to the workplace, what are PRASA's plans to ensure, because I presume this is taxpayers' money that is being spent on the railways. If we could therefore also get an indication of the monthly costs of these lines that are currently not being not operating. I think we need, as a province, a fuller picture. And lastly, Chair, my request during this meeting, if we could get an indication of what is required to get the PRASA trains back on rail, and what are the timelines. And now I'm not referring only to the real thorny issues where people are now currently, putting up structures within the railway reserve, etc. But I'm just talking about open lines that seem to be damaged or neglected over the last year, where apparently there's been a lack of maintenance. Thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you, Honourable van der Westhuizen. Honourable Mkondlo, before I hand over to you, can I just make a proposal that all the request for information with regard that emanated from this discussion now with regards to PRASA, that it doesn't form or formulate part of this resolutions, because PRASA wasn't part of this meeting. So I just think that in the interest of providing PRASA an opportunity to present to the committee, that those requests for information, in particular Honourable van der Westhuizen's request, that be put in the letter to PRASA for presentation to the committee. I was going to propose that at the end of this meeting, because I have the draft request to PRASA is in draft form. I just needed to bring it to the committee, so I was going to do that at the end. And we're looking at, as per the parliamentary program, for the second week in June, so the 8th of June or the 22nd of June, if PRASA is available on either of those two dates. So just so that the committee is aware. Honourable van der Westhuizen, would that be in order with you?
Absolutely. Thank you for that summary, Chair. So yeah, that resolution was about the way forward when PRASA is invited. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very, very much. Honourable Mkondlo.
Thank you, Chair. Can I request, I think, which is what I've raised in the meeting, the the project costs for this bus safety project and the 5 projects it's indicated, including who's funding what in terms of that. Secondly, I think in line with what Member Maseko raised, perhaps if the department can provide us an update on the engagements around Transport Authority discussion with National. Perhaps they could give us some just a status update of where that conversation is at the moment. And then I think we would also need to request the department through its communications and stakeholder engagement to really give an indication if there are currently or in the future any efforts to really find ways of engaging with commuters as a stakeholder, because I think in most of these kind of, especially in the transport sector, you would see that what triggers our engagement and what triggers actually public finance and public response or policy response is the effects, of the transport system to the commuter. But you do not have a structured engagement with the commuters, which then enable their voice into the policy discussions and including the resource allocation. Because now, as an example, we're talking about the taxi industry, which gets to be engaged, and there are various iterations in terms of how the department is supporting, the call and issues of the taxi industry. But when it comes to commuters, they are either left to, some individual engagements or, one up out there, some marketing or advertising kind of an engagement. So I'm requesting, Chair, that we consider if there exists, if not, where in future they are considering some kind of a structural engagement with commuters, as a sector, including communities that gets to be affected, especially in this regard. We're talking about Philippi corridor, we're talking about Kailicha and the others that are mentioned, which gets to be affected by some of the things that have been raised, and also the safety project. The last two, Chair, I think includes the request of the legal opinion that was indicated that it was provided, and also if an indication about what has been the cost or what has been the money that the department has actually contributed to Golden Arrow. I think the Golden Arrow also mentioned that they were thankful of the money that went towards cameras in buses. So can we just get an indication of what has been the money that the department has given to Golden Arrow and for what purposes? Thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you, Honourable Nkondlo. Mr. Kotse, can you just give us an indication if you have captured all those requests?
That's correct, Chairperson. I'll draft it and then just submit to you. Yeah.
All right, thank you very, very much. Members, are there anything else that you would like to raise under general? All right, if not, thank you very much, members, for this engagement today. I think it was very important, and thank you for the manner in which we could engage the various departments and the City of Cape Town and Golden Arrow Bus Service.
Sorry, Chair.
Yes, Mr.
Sorry, I missed you. My apologies, Chair. So I wanted to check whether then the resolution on PRASA is just that we are just going to give them an invite to come and address us, and we are not going to list all those things that Honourable Van Westhuizen has listed on the resolution, but it's going to be a letter to them.
Yes, what I proposed was that the request for information, as proposed by Honourable Van Westhuizen, gets put in a letter to them so that they are made aware of what the committee is looking for, and that it's not part of this meeting resolutions, because PRASA wasn't part of the meeting. As I indicated at the time, I allowed Honourable Van Westhuizen the latitude to ask questions with regards to that, because it directly affected the citizens of this province at this point. But in order to provide PRASA with an opportunity, I don't think that it's fair to list it as a resolution, other than to provide them with an opportunity first.
No problem. No. Understood, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Members, thank you very much for the engagement, as I said. Mr. Kutsia, to you and the ICT team, thank you very much. From my side, the meeting is adjourned.